It's good to see everyone. Augustine said, "Men go around the world and wonder at the heights of mountains, the huge waves of the sea, the long courses of rivers, the vast compass of the ocean, at the circular motions of the stars, and they pass by themselves without wondering." The psalmist got it right in Psalms 139. Look at verse 13. Psalms 139, verse 13. He says, "For you formed my inward parts, for you wove me in my mother's womb. I will give thanks to you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works." And my soul, he says, knows it very well. We've talked about this at this place before, about the physical body, about your human body that has been made by the Creator. We've talked about the different systems that are in your body. We've talked about the brain, the nervous system, the eyes, the ears, the circulatory system. We've talked about all the things that make the human body an amazing machine. And we've recognized its marvelous design. And we make the case and the argument, and rightly so, the very fact that it is designed in a way that it is, that fact alone is enough that says that there is a designer and there is a creator of the human body, the thing that we have here today. I'd like to angle that a little bit more on, I guess, use that particular line of evidence and maintain that line of thought, but not on the physical realm. But this evening I want us to know that there is more that makes up a man than just his physical body and just his physical being. I want you to appreciate with me tonight that human beings, you, are also moral creatures. We are moral creatures, that we possess a sense of morality, that we possess a sense of the way things ought to be, and we have to behave a certain way, that there are things that are right, and that there are things that will always be right. There are things that are wrong, and there are things that will always be wrong. We possess that sense of morality, and I would like to suggest to you that when you start peeling back the layers of morality that we go through and that we think about, when you get there, what you're going to find is God. After all of the things that are said and all of the things that are put out there, when we go through those layers, God is at the center. I believe that every day that we live, we should live in a way that shows our faith and shows our confidence in the Creator, in God, in that fact. Our moral lives ought to project that we serve a moral Creator. I want to say that our morality helps us make that case, whether Christian or not. That morality makes the case that there is a God. Now I want to state this fact. Man is a moral being. I believe that all human beings possess a sense of morality. I believe that there is a moral code, if you will. I believe that. And I believe that we all have that. The University of Texas professor, Jay Bowaski, I got this. He described it this way, and he described these rules as this: what we can't not know. Now you can quibble with his grammar on that point, but don't let go of what he's saying. Human beings have a moral code. I want to step away from the scripture, and for the last 2 or 3 weeks I've been hammering, and I got done with this lesson. This is the least amount of scripture that I've ever had in any lesson. But there was a reason for that, and I want you to know that people that don't study the Bible, that don't even believe in the Word of God or the book of God, they don't believe in God. They don't believe anything about it. This is the people that I come in contact with a lot, and I'm sure that you do. And a lot of times when we sit down to prove God or to talk about things of God, let's open up the book of God and let's show them some things in the book of God. But folks, if they don't believe in the book and they don't believe in God, maybe we ought to have a different approach, and maybe we ought to talk to them on what is common ground with them. And that way when we go to establish truth and make a solid argument, I think sometimes we can convince them of the truth of God just using their own arguments. And so tonight, just for a little bit, I'm going to be looking at some of those things. Every person has a moral code. There are no exceptions. You can go back 2,000 years, you can go back 5,000 years, they still have the code. It doesn't matter where you live in the world. It doesn't matter if you live in the most populated urban place in the world or the most remotest place in the world. You have a moral code. It doesn't matter how you were raised. Think about that. It doesn't matter if your parents were good and taught you values and tried to instill those values in you, right and wrong. It doesn't matter if your parents were no good and didn't try to instill any moral training in you at all. It doesn't matter if you're religious. It doesn't matter if you have all kinds of religious training. It doesn't matter if you've never darkened the door of a church. It doesn't matter. We still have the code. It doesn't matter how good or bad you are. It doesn't matter. You still have that moral code in you. Even in our life, if we don't follow the moral code, it's still there. It's still there. Now, some of you think, now wait a minute now. You know what? I watch those crime shows. I see that. Man, there are sociopaths. Those guys in death row, they're killers, man. I mean, they can't have any moral code. Those guys are way off. And think about that for a while. Well, you know, that sounds reasonable. And you think, well, as a general rule, all of us have a moral code, but not those guys. Now, you can talk to the worst offender, the worst criminal in any prison in America. And I promise you that after you talk to them for a while, you find out they have a moral code. You find that out. And so you talk to him a minute, and you know what? Ask him how his trial went. Ask him. I'll tell you what, they were unfair to me. They were unfair. Ask the criminal how they're treating him in prison. Oh, I'll tell you what, the guards, they mistreat me. And this is the worst food I've ever had. Ask the criminal, the sociopath killer that has no moral code. Ask him about, well, what do you think about the death penalty? Well, that's immoral. That's wrong. That's murder. People ought not to kill people. And so when you go through that and you think, even that guy has a code of morality. The worst man in prison has a sense of morality. Now, hear me clearly though tonight. We do not always agree on where that line of morality is. But every human being believes that you draw those lines in the moral code. Well, the question is, how did we get that way? How did that thing come up like that? How does that exist? How is it that every human being that has ever walked on the face of this earth has a moral code? That interested me. Let me add this. Our moral codes are similar. Yes, they are. I realize that can be a controversial statement, for after all, there are cultures in this world who recognizes that it's all right for you to have a plurality of wives. Now, in America, unless you're in Utah and that guy on TV has got 5 wives, we would think that that's immoral. We would think that that's wrong. But not in the society that recognizes it as all right, from a moral view. But now you think, well, how in the world? That's not similar at all. But now, if you think about it, when you look at it in the big picture of things and think about other areas in which all people are alike in a moral code, you know what? What culture or what society builds a statue, recognizes this guy that was in the heat of the battle, and right in the middle of the worst battle, he takes off and hides? They don't build a statue for that guy. They don't honor him. You know a culture or society that does that? No. Why? We're all following the same moral code. How about the guy that steals and mistreats his family and those that he loves and just does that. Do we honor that guy? Do we think that guy's all right? No. And there's not a culture or place in the world that does that. So there are similarities in the way that every person in this world thinks. Well, again, how'd we get that way? You ever think about it? I think about stuff back there a lot, maybe you don't. But I wonder, how did everybody come to see morality the same in so many different levels all around the world? That amazes me. When it comes to morality, one of the things that interests me too is that we expect everybody to know the code. I don't have to know where you're from. I don't need to know your name. I don't need to know your background. I don't need to know your education. I don't need to know how you've been influenced. But you know what? I think that you need to know the code, and you need to respect the code, and you need to follow that code. You ever think about that? You know, you're down at Disney World, and you're there with your family. You got the kids there, and you've been standing inside for 2 hours in this line. And here comes, you've been standing 2 hours. You're just about that place where they tell you got 2 more days to wait, you know, where the bar comes up and blocks everybody off. And here comes a family from Mongolia. And he's got his 6 kids and his wife, and they just cut in line in front of him. They're in front of him. Now, you see that, and they walk right up, cut in. Here's the question for you, moral code. How you feel? How you feel about that? You're mad about that, aren't you? You're mad because that happened to you. You feel that, you tense up, and that redness on that Jackson County neck, it's raising. They're in front of you. They cut in line in front of you. Well, here's the question. What are you going to do? You're mad at them. Why? Why are you mad at them? They're from because they broke the code. They broke the moral code. Without any knowledge of these people, you expect them to know that breaking the line, doing that, that's wrong. You expect them to know that. I know what you don't do. You don't say, well, you know what, honey, I can tell by the way their accent is, they're from Mongolia, and I know that Mongolia has different line cutting rules. You don't say that, do you? No. You know that the code is the same. And I look at that and I think about that. It's as though that there has been some unspoken law that we all agreed to long time ago. Think about that. Now, about a more serious illustration, you remember the Nuremberg trials after World War II? When the Nazi war criminals were prosecuted? On what basis? On what law did they prosecute those that did those horrid acts? Was it the laws in Germany? Was that it? I'll tell you what those men did. Why were they prosecuted? They violated humanity's code of conduct. Where'd that come from? The rules that we all agreed to. Think about it. Think about it. We all agree to that. Worldwide. What we can't not know. You wait your turn. It's not fair to push ahead. You know what? That family from Mongolia, they know they're not supposed to cut in line in Disney World. They know that. They know that. And you know, let me add, we really care about the code. Because whenever we violate the code, you know what we try to do? We try to justify why we violate the moral universal code that's out there. Let's say that you're not one of those that takes the behavior of the Mongolian family lightly, lying down, and you run off the mouth at Mr. Mongolian guy. And you say, hey, you see this line we're in? He goes back down around the tilt-a-whirl twice and out by the Ferris wheel and 6 blocks down the front gate. That's where you need to go. And listen, you know, my wife's got a cell phone No, it's a smartphone. She's got a smartphone, and she's going to call the ambulance for you after I get done with you if you don't get back there. All right? Say that's how you respond. Say you say that. Now, if you said that, what do you think they'll say? Do you think they'll say, look, I'm a moral relativist, and you know what? I don't go by your rules. Do you think that they'll say, I'm from Mongolia, and in Mongolia we got different line cutting rules? They're not going to say that. They're not going to say that. Because the rules are the same. The moral code is the same. Now, he might say something like, hey, listen, man, I'm sorry. In his best Mongolian accent. I'm sorry, but my daughter was dehydrated, and these people are our friends, and they held the line for us, and we went over and took her to the nurse's tent over there, got her some water. She's fine now. So they were holding our place in line. What are they saying? They're trying to justify for cutting in line for you because they broke the code. Or they might look at you and say, hey, you know what? Hey, listen, I know I'm cutting in line, but I'll tell you what. I got a jet. I got to catch it. 3 hours. If I don't get on this ride now, I'm never going to get a ride again. I'm never come back again. What are they doing? They're making excuses because they know they broke the code. That's what they're doing. Well, how we get this way? How did it get that way? I don't know. Maybe I'm just the only guy that thinks about it that way. How do we account for this? How do we explain this? How is that in our moral nature? Genesis chapter 1. And what I'll tell you is that for the Christian, it's easy. It's very easy. It's not a problem at all why we are moral beings. Verse 26. Then God said, let us make man in our image, according to our likeness. Let them rule over the fish in the sea and over the birds of the sky and over the cattle and over the earth and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. God created man in his own image. The image of God, he created him. Male and female, he says, he created them. We are created in God's image. That wasn't the only time he said that. Chapter 5, verse 1. He says it again. This is the book of the generations of Adam. And in the day when God created man, he made him in the likeness of God, in his image. Chapter 9, verse 6. He says it again. He says, whosoever sheds man's blood, by man his blood shall be shed. For in the image of God, he made man, in God's image. You know what? We say that lightly. We've talked about that a lot. But do you know the dimensions that entails? Think about that. You are made in the image of God. In God's image. What's that mean? That means that we're like him. We have the same moral sensibility that God does. We're moral beings because we have been created, we have been made by a moral creator. That's what that means. We have a sense of absolute right and wrong because we were made in the image of a God, of a creator who has an absolute sense of right or wrong. That's how you got it. That's how we got it. It doesn't matter where you live. It doesn't matter. It's still in there. It's in you. It's in human beings because of who we are and how we were made. To the Christian, it's not hard to understand. Let me say that also. Notice what Timothy says, or Paul says to Timothy. I believe that the moral code that we possess, of course, it can be enhanced and developed by God's revelation. Paul told Timothy, 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 16, all scripture is given by inspiration of God. It's profitable for doctrine, for reproof, for correction, for instruction in righteousness, that the man of God might be perfect, complete, thoroughly furnished unto every good work. This sense of morality that is innate in us, that God gave us because we were created by him, can be enhanced, can be developed by reading God's word, building on our sense of morality. We learn more and more about the God of heaven and about right or wrong from the book that he gave us. But even if those that have never read the book, never read it, don't know anything about it, they know the code. People know the moral code. Now, the question is, what does the unbeliever do with this? As a Christian, I just read a couple verses and I can recognize why I have this moral code. The Darwinists would argue that these things somehow how they came into being. That this non-living matter came alive when given enough time and chance. Well, that sounds pretty good, and I think about that. And what we're saying is that nature helped develop your morality. That's actually what the atheist is saying. The truth is most atheists, and I think most Darwinists, don't touch this, what we've been talking about, the issue of morality and how we got it. They don't touch it with a 10-foot pole. They're going to tell you all about how a brain is developed, how a stomach develops over time, millions of this, millions of that. But they have a very difficult time touching morality. They can't figure that out. They don't understand how that, it's kind of difficult to explain how, and there's your title, how highly advanced pond scum became moral. It's pretty tough to be able to do that, and so they don't tackle that. Lots give that knee-jerk reaction of, it's environmental. It's environmental, it's by nature. In other words, your parents taught you not to lie, cheat, and steal. And so you're going to teach your children not to lie, teach, and they're going to lie, cheat, and steal. They're going to teach their children the same. And that's how, just reverse it, that's how it is. But that still leaves an unanswered question. What happened to the first parents? How did the first parents get what they got to instill in their children? It still leaves the question unanswered. How did we become moral? How did we become moral? Paul Earnhardt, a gospel preacher, he's not related to Dale. I love what he said about it. He says, if man had originated out of the chaos of non-rational and non-moral forces, it is only reasonable to conclude that he would be incapable of moral thought. That's true. He should be mindlessly happy in whatever conduct he chooses. And he's right about that. Other things aren't moral. A tree doesn't feel bad when it falls on your house. A dog, we don't arrest a dog and put him in jail because he dug under the neighbor's fence and ate his flowers. We don't arrest a dog and put him in jail. Dogs don't feel guilty or moral. It is unique to us. And how do they explain that? In evolution. There are some atheists that state that man has learned this through experience and pain. Let's go back to the caveman days. Here's two cavemen. They just killed an animal, and they're sitting there eating the animal because that's why they killed him. They had to eat him to live. And Ooga Chucka looks over, and Ooga Ooga is eating the white meat. No, Ooga Ooga. And he wants that meat. And he says, Ooga Ooga. And the other guy takes the caveman club and bashes him on the head because he got, wrong piece and killed him. But that was good because guess what he got? He got to eat the meat that he wanted because the guy was dead. The next day, they're going to go out to hunt. And Ooga Ooga realizes, hey man, this is a little hard because my buddy's dead. It's a lot easier to kill an animal with somebody else. So he experiences pain. And through that pain of millions and millions and millions and millions of years, that's how we developed a moral code. That killing's wrong because that means pain for you. That means your caveman buddy's not going to be with you tomorrow. You see? And really and truly, that's the answer. That's the answer that's out there. I looked. That's the answer. Now, that all sounds real good. That all sounds real good that our sense of morality compels us until it compels us to do painful things. Now think about that. Dangerous things, life-threatening things. If your code of conduct has been developed by man's experience with pain and self-preservation, why do people endanger their lives? Why you run in a building that's burning to save your children? Why would you rush into a car that's on fire to do this? Why would you swim out in the middle of the ocean to save anyone? Do you see the parallel? Do you see the inconsistency in that? It's there. How does one's moral code drive us to do things that create pain, that create danger, and even death. Folks, if we are what the atheists say we are truly incapable of any moral thought. We ought to be mindlessly happy in whatever our pursuit. That's not what we are. We are moral beings because we were created by a moral creator. And it is instilled in us. You know what? The atheist would never want to live in the worldview that he creates. He would not. The atheist would not want to live there. Think about it. It's odd for me to listen to atheists and more liberal-minded people that make light of the Christian who appeals to divine law and who appeals to divine law to find the answers of such things that have been brought up tonight, and ridicule that thought and that line of reasoning, but yet at the same time would admonish the rest of us that we ought to do right. Another inconsistency. I don't understand that. In the realm of moral thought, even the atheist would say, what? Yeah, it's right to feed the hungry. The atheist would say it's right to feed those that are hungry. It's right to clothe those that need clothes. It's right to house the homeless. You ought to do right and care for needy children. That's what the atheist would say. It's the right thing to do. Folks, if there's no God, then all truth becomes relative. That's a stated fact. Everything becomes a matter of opinion. But then they tell us that we ought to do what's right. We ought to take care of the needy. Who says that's right? We ought to house the homeless. Who says that's right? Why is that right? Why is it not right for me to trample the needy? Why not? Why is it not right for me to care for the less fortunate? Why? For that matter, why is it not right for me just to kill anybody that gets in my way? Why not? That's what Hitler did. Oh, you know what? There you go. That's another guy. That guy, he was way beyond bad. He was evil. That guy was evil. He was the worst. Somebody got in his way. He just killed him, put him in the gas chamber. He's the worst. You can't talk about him. He's another species. By what standard do you say that? If you say he was that way, by what standard are you appealing to even say that he's that kind of a person? If such a standard exists, then truth is not relative. That's the point. And such a standard does exist. But that's what the unavoidable consequence of rejecting God is. What a mess. What a mess the atheist puts himself in. Now, we can talk all day till the cows come home about evolution and billions of years and time and pond scum, but you get them to talk to you about morality and the code of moral ethics and the conduct of human beings and how that came to be, like it is, universally. Absolute laws. The atheist wants to live in our world that's been created by God's divine law. He wants to be here. He really does. But he doesn't want what is applied from this to his misbehavior. It really boils down to all this. And all of this is really, you know what it is? It's all man's attempt just to do whatever he wants. That's what it is. It's man's attempt to do whatever he wants, to behave like he wants to. The psalmist had it right. We are wonderfully made. From the amazing systems in our body physically that causes us to function physically, to the innermost moral sensibility that we have that's been given to us, that moral sensibility that knows what is right, that knows what is wrong, that has been given to us by a Creator that made us that way. He gave us part of Him, not just us. Every single person that has ever lived in this world has it and will always have it. The question is, once we find Him, once we recognize God, what are you going to do with Him? He's the Creator. He is the Sustainer. He is ruling. The question tonight, is He ruling in your life? Is He ruling in your life? I guess that is the question. You know, it's okay to sit here and talk about the Creator. It's okay to talk about the King. It's okay to talk about moral absolutes and non-absolutes. But you know what? We need to go on believing in God. But you know what? We need to submit to that Creator who has made us. If you're outside of Christ tonight, we would encourage you to come. As we stand in invitation, sing the invitation song, please come. Together we stand and sing.